You cannot live off another person's relationship with God. You can draw strength from it, certainly. You can learn lessons from it, certainly. They can be a testimony, an example to you, absolutely. But eventually, you're going to have to get up on Blue Monday and overcome. Right? You're going to have to work your job. You're going to have to pay your bills. You're going to have to deal with life. You're going to go through tests and trials. You're going to have to believe God. You're going to have to read the Word on your own. You're going to have to say your prayers. You're going to have to get yourself to the house of God. You're going to have to overcome. It's got to come from your personal relationship with God. Now, I got this great quote here. I just think it's great. There's one kind of paradox here. On the one hand, I say, I need you. God has appointed you as a means of grace to help me endure to the end. But on the other hand, I must say the only way you can really help me is by saying or doing something that will cause me to depend on God and not you. Don't you think that's a great quote? That's such a great quote. I'm going to read that quote again. There is one kind of paradox here. A paradox is when, two seemingly contradictory things are both true. All right, there's one kind of paradox here. On the one hand, I say I need you. God has appointed you as a means of grace to help me endure to the end. But on the other hand, I must say the only way you can really help me is by saying or doing something that will cause me to depend on God and not you. So we're not called to be enablers in a wrong sort of sense. We're called to strengthen and encourage each other in the Lord, but really the ultimate way we encourage and strengthen one another in the Lord is to say or do something that causes that person that we're encouraging to depend on God and not me. Look to the Lord. He'll come through for you. He will help you. Jonathan strengthened David's hand in God. I'm sure he reminded David of the promise of God, the anointing that he's going to be the next king, that God was going to take care of him. And you know what? Jonathan left him and he wasn't there for David, but his words remained, his encouragement remained, and David had to learn to strengthen his hand in God, right? So we got to learn to encourage one another so that each person is learning to depend upon God and not anything other than the Lord. Discouragement is always circumstantial. It always has a cause. And I have 4 down here. The 4 causes of discouragement are circumstances. Well, what would I say about that? Well, discouraging circumstances. Trials and tests of life, circumstances can discourage you. Other people, we talked about how people can empty your bucket. People in your life can discourage you. Satan, certainly, as the accuser of the brethren, he can bring a spirit of fear. He can bring a spirit of heaviness. He can bring a sense of condemnation. He can lie to you so that you believe a lie. You know what? The Apostle Paul talked about how he had a messenger of Satan sent to buffet him. Certainly, that messenger was a great discouragement in the Apostle Paul's life. And you know what? The number one cause of discouragement is not circumstances or other people, even the devil. We have met the enemy and he is us. The number one cause of discouragement probably is that person you look at in the mirror. That's why in Psalm 42, David said, or the psalmist, I think it's the Psalm of Asaph, the choir director. That's why the psalmist says, he's talking to himself. He says, why are you disquieted? Why are you all cast down? Hope in God. Come on. Get with the program. He realized that he had to talk to himself and remind himself that he had faith in God, that God will help him, that God will cause him praising again. And that's what each and every one of us need to do, is when we have that self-talk going on that takes you down to a pit, where you talk yourself into believing lies or looking at the circumstances or magnifying the problem and causing you to grow in despair. I want you to know that you've got to rally yourself. God can send people your way to help you. God can give you a message on hope to help you, such as this message here today. But something has to happen on the inside of you where you rally yourself. and say, I need to hope in God. I need to trust in God. I need to place my confidence in the Lord. I need to be a person of faith. I need to read the Word. I need to trust His promises. I got to keep laying hold on Him and cleaving to Him and work out my salvation and endure through this problem and believe God to see me through to the very end. And if I do those things, I know that God will be faithful to me.